everyone, and welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me. And I cannot wait to start engaging everyone in this video. And I just want to say welcome to our 365 Days with Jesus. My name is Yvette Andino from the Woodside Spanish SDA Church and from New York City in Queens. And I'm just very excited to be here with each and every one of you. And let's begin. So we're going to continue reading our Bibles, right? We're reading our Bibles, trying to finish reading them from beginning to end in a year. And we're going to start today with the second book of Kings. We're still continuing with it. And we're going to read chapter 6, 7, and 8 today. We're going to be engaging with that. So in chapter 6, there's a few segments divided into chapter. So the first one is called the axe head recovered. The axe head recovered. Probably, what is that? So there's a group of the prophets that go with Elisha. They always commune together. They do work on different projects together. So they say, hey, we want to, make a beam for like as a building. Like, let's make some building first so we can like reside there and like work there. And Elisha said, that's fine, let's do that. But they had asked him, can you please come with us? So they kind of wanted his like maybe blessing, approval, or just, his presence there. Sometimes we feel comfortable with certain people. So this is what their comfort was, right? He's like, yeah, of course, I'll go. So then one of the prophets was cutting down a beam, right, from like a tree, you could say, but he had borrowed an axe, right? And then when he did it, when he cut the tree, the axe head like fell and it just like flew into the water. And he says in verse 5, oh no, my master, it was borrowed. He's telling Elisha it was borrowed, it's not mine. So the man of God or Elisha said, where did it fall? And he showed him the place because it like drowned in the river, the axe. It sunk in the river, I mean. And Elisha cut off a stick and threw it in there. And then all of a sudden the iron on the axe head started floating. He said, pick it up for yourself. So he reached out with his hand and took it. Very interesting. Some sort of buoyancy, some science, right? And God is the God of everything, God of science, God of medicine. So that was nice. That even as like a minor thing, it was nice. Like, wow, God can still help us even in the minor, right? And it will always have that major impact on us. Now, the second part of the chapter talks about the Arameans plot to capture Elisha. Why? So, so God tells Elisha like all the things that he needs to know, right? So God tells Elisha that, hey, the king of Syria wants to make war with Israel, but they're gonna go to a certain place, and that certain place is exactly where the king is. So tell the king to not that he was there, but to avoid that area. So then Elisha warns the king as God tells him to, and then the Syrian king gets upset. Like, oh, who snitched? Like, who told the king to not go? We could have had him and this would have been done. And then the king's messenger is like, well, in Israel, there's a famous prophet called Elisha. And Elisha knows everything because and anything that happens, whatever you speak in your bedroom, he knows it. And I actually had a chuckle when I was reading this. I'm like, that's funny. Like how God knows everything, even though there's a sense of humor, like, wow, even in your bedroom, like, what are you doing? You're sleeping or whatever you're doing, you're cleaning or anything you do, like he knew because God would tell him. Not in those minute details, but it's for me, I found it a little silly, like, wow. So he gets upset. The king's like, oh, he knows my business. Okay, let's go seize him. So then the servant of Elisha, so he has a new servant. He gets very scared because he starts seeing all these chariots and horses. Like, imagine like thousands or hundreds of men against just two. He's like, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? And Elisha's like, don't be afraid. He's like, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them. And the servant was probably like, it's just us two, Elisha. At least that's my reaction. So Elisha prays, like, Lord, it says verse 17, Lord, please open his eyes that he may see what's going on. So the Lord opened the servant's eyes and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire surrounding Elisha. When the Arameans came down to him, Elisha prayed to the Lord and said, please strike this people with blindness. And now the Amplified Bible Commentary says, this is an unusual Hebrew word that implies they were blinded by a dazzling bright light. So I guess the Hebrew word for blindness is a bit, maybe a little grammatically awkward in this, but to translate it was blindness in English. And God struck them with blindness in accordance with Elisha's request. Then Elijah said to the Arameans, "This is not the way, nor is this the city. Follow me, and I will lead you to the man whom you're seeking." He led them to Samaria. So, because they're blind, they don't even know how he sounds. This is funny. So, when they had come into Samaria, Elisha said, "Lord, open the eyes of these men so that they may see." And the Lord opened their eyes, and they saw. Behold, they were in the midst of Samaria. When the king of Israel, or Jehoram, saw them, he said to Elisha, "My father, shall I kill them? Like, these are our enemies. Like, they're trying to kill you. Shall I kill them?" Elisha answered, "No, you shall not kill them. Would you kill those you have taken captive with your sword and bow? Serve them bread and water so that they may eat and drink and go back to their master, their king Ben Hadad, or the king of Syria." So the king prepared a great feast for them, and they ate and they drank, and he sent them away. And they went back to their master. And the Marauding bands of Syria did not come into the land of Israel again. So when you give mercy, you hopefully receive mercy, right? Now, he still hasn't given up. The king was like, "Well, now I'm going to besiege Samaria." Samaria um is part of Israel, or has, it's close to it, or is inside it, I believe. But what's going on in Samaria was there was this great famine. So they started to sell meats, unclean meats, like donkey said in the Bible, especially I think it's Leviticus 23, if I'm not mistaken, shows all the clean meat. Donkey is an unclean meat. We're not, as followers of God, we shouldn't be eating it. It's unclean, maybe for even health reasons, right? So for health, there are more reasons we should not eat a donkey's head. But for example, it says it as an example in verse 25. There was a great famine in Samaria, and Syria besieged it until a donkey's head was sold for 80 shekels of silver, and a fourth of a cob of dove's dung for 5 shekels of silver. However, in the Amplified commentary, it says normally dung was used as a fertilizer for fuel. However, in this verse, dove's dung may be a nickname for like a wild pea like vegetable. I hope so. That's just nasty. And a donkey's head. I'm a vegetarian, so anything's kind of like, so it's horrible. Then, as the king of Israel was passing by the city, there was a woman who cried out to him. She said, "Help my lord, O king." He said, "If the Lord does not help you, from where should I get you help? From the threshing floor, or from the winepress?" And the king said to her, "What is the matter with you?" She answered, "This woman said to me, 'Give your son so we may eat him today, and we will eat my son tomorrow.' So we cooked my son and ate him. The next day I said to her, 'Give your son so that we may eat him.' But she had hidden her son." When the king heard the woman's words, he tore his clothes. So now, tearing the clothes is as an act of symbolizing grief or anguish. Now he was still walking alone on the wall, and the people looked at him, and he had on sackcloth underneath his robe next to his skin. Then he said, "May God do so to me, and more also the head of Elisha, the son of Shaphat, remains on him today." So, sackcloth is a coarse cloth, a very hard cloth, usually made of goat's hair, worn as a sign of mourning. So you're probably thinking like, wait, what does Elisha have to do with this horrible, sinful cannibalism act, right? So it says on the Amplified Bible commentary, which I think it has some certain a certain extent of truth, right? At the end, God knows the truth. Jehoram, the king of Israel, may have been angry at Elisha. Why? Because the prophet had persuaded him not to kill the enemy army when he had the chance. Remember, he may also blame Elisha for the famine or for failing to ask God to end it, though there's no indication that Elisha had called for it or announced it. Which, remember, Elijah, his mentor, did. I don't think he called the drought or the famine, but he was able to like end it. That God said, "Whenever you say it, it'll end." So that's interesting, just to see that little connection. So Elisha was sitting in his house, and then one of the messengers of the king come to him, and is asking for help, and he's like, "Do you see how this son of Jezebel, or how a murderer has sent a man to remove my head? Look, when the messenger comes, shut the door, hold it securely against him. Is not the sound of his master feet just behind him?" And then, while Elisha was still talking with them, the messenger came down to him, followed by the king. The king said, "This evil situation is from the Lord. Why should I wait for help from the Lord any longer?" So he's upset, obviously, that a poor innocent child was killed. And now he kind of is going out after Elisha in anger. And then even Elisha's insulting him, like, why do I want to even deal with it? You're the one who's like trying to kill me, and you are a son of a pagan woman, and you are following her way. So, and now you see frustration. So I think what I like about the Bible is that you see conflict, you see even conflict resolution, you see frustrations from both parties, right? From God, from us. So it's just nice to kind of embrace the experience. Like we all have different feelings, different reactions to things, coping, and let's see what happens in chapter 7. So let's continue. This was a big gory. Ugh. So then Elisha does promise food. Elijah tells the king, listen, hear the word of the Lord. Thus says the Lord, verse 1. Tomorrow about this time, a measure of finely milled flour will sell for a shekel. Oh, so inflation will be done. And 2 measures of barley for a shekel at the gate of Samaria. But there was this royal officer who starts questioning God, and Elijah, like, so if the Lord should make windows in heaven for the rain, could this thing take place? Like, I found it insulting. It's like, oh, but if he makes the, like, if he takes his time out of like his busy schedule and do this, and then it actually does happen, then it's like being sassy with God. I don't know. Elijah said, "Behold, you will see it with your own eyes, but because you doubt, you will not eat it." And we're gonna see what it really meant by that. We're gonna see later on. Now, the next part of the story is a bit silly for me. I found it a little comedic. So these are these 4 lepers, and lepers are people who suffer from leprosy. And it doesn't in the Bible, we had to remember leprosy meant different contagious and skin diseases. So it could be the actual leprosy, like the worst of the worst, or different other variants like eczema. Not that it's contagious, but different skin conditions that could be contagious and not contagious, just harmful for us. So there's these 4 lepers and say, I find this a little comedic, really, because they're talking to each other like, okay, as lepers, we can't go near people because we're so highly contagious. So we're isolated, but we're hungry and we can't even get food. So they're like, why should we wait and just sit here while we're there? Let's have like a good meal. Like, let's go eat. And they noticed that the Syrians or the Arameans, sorry, they left their camp abandoned, and there's a lot of food there, so they're like, let's just go and have this last meal. So they do it. They ransack the tents, and they do get food from, I believe it was just one tent, but they were able to eat and drink happy, so they were fed and nourished. But then one said to another, like, okay, we just did a wrong thing, we shouldn't do this. Like, let's just let us go to the king's house. So like, let's confess, like kind of saying, let's confess to the police, let's confess to the king, tell them what we did. So they tell the king, like, hey, there's an abandoned Aramean camp, and we just ate their food, and we're very sorry, we're hungry, we're lepers and all this. And the king is like, wait a minute. He's a little smart. He's like, you just went to an abandoned camp of our enemy? And they're like, yeah, we were hungry. And he's like, where? So he gets excited, like, that's fine. He kind of like pardoned their crime in a way. And just, and then he had a plan. So the king says, please let some men take 5 of the horses which remain inside the city. And consider this: if they are caught from the enemy camp, right? If they do come back to camp, they will be like all the people of Israel who are left in the city. Even if they are killed, then they will be like all the people of Israel who have already died. They're like, it's 5 deaths. It's not a huge deal, which for us is like, it's still a big deal. So let us send them and see what happens. So they took the 2 chariots, and the king said, yes, go and see. Then so these 5 men, they went after them to the Jordan. All the road was entirely littered with clothing and equipment from the Syrians. They're also known as the Arameans, so I just want to clarify. They thrown away when they hurriedly fled. The messengers returned and told the king. You're probably thinking, why did the enemy camp abandon their camp? The reason was that God allowed them to hear different heard the Israelite army, and they thought they were across like this valley, and they went, and then they're not there. So then the people of Israel went out and plundered the camp, right? Because what happened in Israel, there's a famine, there's no food, there's no drink, nothing. So goods were so plentiful that a measure of finely milled flour was sold for a shekel, which Elisha predicted, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel, which Elisha predicted through God, in accordance with the word of the Lord. And then remember that royal officer that was like kind of, not he defied God's authority. He was being very doubtful and like kind of inferring something very negative with God's authority. And so he actually got, it says at the end, and remembers, and he said, Elijah had, you will see it with your own eyes, right? The food, but because of your doubt, you will not eat it. And so it happened to him, for the people trampled him at the gate and he died. Oof. Okay, so I just want to clarify for those watching this, and or for those who will watch this at any time. God is not scared of your doubts. God is not belittled or scared or feeling fear because you have questions, you have doubts. No, I do think God has a problem though when we defy his authority in such a derogative way. Like, you're actually, like, the way the guy is like, and we don't know the original Hebrew. Maybe he could have said it in a much more derogative way. He's basically saying, "Oh, so if God does this like little silly illusion, like, it's very insulting." It's kind of like, the way I saw it was kind of like if you ever been in a work meeting and someone's like, "Yeah, yeah, that proposal sounds good if like pigs could fly." Like, it's very demeaning. And I think that's where God, we cannot insult God's name or his, and we cannot dishonor, defile him. That's something very sacred. So we just got to keep mindful of that, and not that we're going to be trampled the next day. But, God is merciful. And if you ask for forgiveness, of course, but I think we need to really show respect and reverence to God. And that's something I know I have to work on myself too. Um, do you guys remember the Shunammite? So she's the lady who didn't have the son till she was a little older, and she's the lady who is very influential, and she always had that little guest room for Elisha and Gehazi. So she was actually living in the Philistines. Now we're in Second Kings chapter 8, by the way. And she lived for the land of the Philistines for 7 years to avoid this famine. Remember, Elisha's like, "Hey, you gotta pack up your stuff, avoid this pain and everything." So she comes back and she petitions to the king, "King, I'm back. I would like my land, to reclaim my land." And the king does. He's like, "Yes, you can go." So that was very nice. And actually in the story, Gehazi is alive because it happens. The story, and even though it's in chapter 8, it does happen before Gehazi gets cursed with the leprosy. So interesting how sometimes the Bible does shift from beginning to from the past to the future, or the present moment, or vice versa. All right. And he even said, which was really nice, restore everything that was hers, including all the produce of the field since that day that she has left until the land now. Very nice. So he said it to one of ranking officials to help him. Now, mm, oh, this is very interesting. So I'm just kind of remembering. So the king, Ben Hadad, is the king of Syria. He has a servant named Hazael, and in this segment it's called Elisha predicts evil from Hazael. So the Syrian king tells Hazael, his servant, "Hey, can you go to Elisha and ask him, will I be healed from this disease? I'm not feeling well. I've been in bed for this long. Let me know, will I ever recover from this illness?" So Elisha said, "Go say to him, you will certainly recover, but the Lord has shown me that he will certainly die." But if you're going to recover, how are you going to die, right? If you're recovering from sickness. So Elisha just stared steadily at Hazael until he was embarrassed. And then Elisha wept, or the man of God wept. Hazael said, "Why are you weeping, my lord?" He answered, "Because I know the evil that you will do to the sons or descendants of Israel. You will set their strongholds on fire, kill their young men with the sword, smash their children to pieces, and rip up their pregnant women." Then Hazael says, "Surely not. For what is your servant who is nothing more than a dog that he would do this monstrous thing?" Elisha answered, "The Lord has shown me that you will be king over Aram, or Syria." And I'm kind of like, "Elijah, you should have said anything." But if it was going to happen, it's going to happen, right? So guess what Hazael does? He leaves Elisha. You would think he would have a moment of like, "Oh my goodness, I wouldn't do this." Like, you know, he came to his master, who said to his, "What did Elisha said to you?" And he answered, "He told me you would most certainly recover." But the next day, Hazael took the bedspread and dipped it in water and covered the king's face so that he died. So he's still weak, he's still sick. And Hazael became king in his place. Ugh, frustrating. So now, the second part is, there's another Jehoram who reigns in Judah. Um, I just went. Oh, yeah, he's the other son of Ahab. He's through the actually the grandson. He's through the daughter of Ahab. So yes, and he did evil in the sight of the Lord. Ugh, these kings and their evil ways. And then so the grandson of Ahab. I'm sorry, Jehoram is the son of Ahab, and then the grandson is Ahaziah. He becomes king once his father, Jehoram, who is the son of Ahab, dies. Right. Um. And he also walked in the ways in the house of Ahab and did evil in the sight of the Lord. Um, and it just ends a little sad because it says now his brother. So remember, he Ahab has two sons, right? So one is the king of Judah and the other one is the king of Israel. Basically means all Israel. Just Israel is known as the northern part. Judah is known as the southern part. Sorry about that. And um, it's sad because then Joram gets injured, so he goes back to Jezreel, the winter palace of the king, to be healed. And then Ahaziah, even though he's the king of Judah, he goes down to see his brother, the other king of Israel, because he was sick. So we will continue with tomorrow's reading that starts with 2 Kings chapter 9 with our brother Luis. I just want to thank every one of you for being with us, tuning in with us, having just I hope you guys are having a great spiritual connection with God, and I pray God is with you, and I pray that you guys always choose God's peace and love. And how you're probably saying by reframing our mindset by reading God's word, by praying, by showing his love to others, by just being good humans. And the two most important things I always like to say, love God and love people. If you do that, your life is perfect. Love God and love people. And even though it's difficult, we can always ask God for help. So God bless you, everyone. I hope you guys have an amazing week. And I hope to see you guys soon. So have a great evening or have a great day or great afternoon, wherever you're tuning in from. Just thank you and God bless you all and your loved ones. Bye bye.